So what's your biggest hope and dream? What would make you want to jump out of bed every single day if it was a reality in your life? Do you know what that is? Do you have an idea of what that is? Do you sit and daydream about what that is? Here is my experience with dreaming that big. Most women in midlife have learned some really nasty habits for shutting that kind of dreaming down. We shut it down with our responsibilities for others. We shut it down with our own doubts about whether we could accomplish it or not. Sometimes we shut it down with our own fear that we would actually succeed. And what would that mean for everybody else in our lives? There's all kinds of icky, sticky habits that we've been taught to do. So don't get too hard on yourself about this. You're actually getting a gold star by getting an A and doing exactly what you were taught. We make our lives small. We're the ones shutting down those dreams, but we've been taught to shut down those dreams. So why? What gives about that? Well, that is going to be the topic of today's podcast. So keep listening. Hey, welcome back. I am so excited to have you here today. And honestly, for the month of May, because fresh on the tail of getting into some new self-care, radically taking your self-care on like, hey, I've got to put myself first so I can put everything else in my life first. If I want to be, the best this and the best that and on top of all my stuff, well, somebody better be taking care of me. So fresh on that, since that's what we were focusing on in April, I am super excited to actually get started in talking about our hopes and dreams. And how do we get there? How do we actually accomplish these hopes and dreams? One of the things I talk about is designing the life that you want to live in, but not just like that you want to live in, but that you've always dreamed of having for yourself. Because I figure if we've made it this far in life, ladies, come on, we should be able to really just name what we want and go for it. And yet, we get stopped, and oftentimes we get stopped by ourselves. But fear not, this is not something that we just decided one day that we wanted to do to ourselves. No, 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 no. This is an internalized depression. Yep. We're talking about patriarchy again. I'm talking about all the supremacies that there are out there. But there is this internalized way in which we shut ourselves off because we've learned for so long to stay small. We've learned for so long not to make a ruckus, that our job was really to take care of everybody else's discomfort. And we actually feel pretty good when we're doing that well. So I don't want to shoot that out of the water too. I think, making sure that my kids feel great, that really makes me feel great, right? Making sure that my clients feel great, that makes me feel great. So I'm not going to blow out of the water that I do have some values and some integrity around taking care of other people. That's just a part of who Dr. Natalie is. And I'm not going to play small anymore. Midlife for me is really about opening that up for women. I want you to understand that there should be nothing holding us back at this point. And many times as I dig through it with the people that come for coaching, I am finding that they're the ones that are squelching this more than anybody else. By this time in their life, they're the ones that are squelching it more than anybody else. Certainly there are roles. There are people that feel uncomfortable when we start to change. So there's some external reasons and external people that might be having us silence our dreams as well. But most often the dreams are just staying silent because we are holding that into place with things like fear of success, fear of failure. Oh yeah, because it's both. We hold it back by not really having an imagination anymore. And really, that's just because we're out of practice. It's really, honestly, it's like almost nothing more than that. But I'm here today to really help us to get a hold of where to begin here. So for some of us, my question as I opened up the podcast today, for some of us, if I ask you questions like, what's your dream? What are your hopes? What do you want for yourself? If nothing was stopping you, not finances, not responsibilities, not fear, if nothing was stopping you, what would you want? Some of us can just boom right out the gate, tell me rather what they would want. And sometimes with adults, it's a little harder to get that to pull through. And with women in midlife, even more so, it's sometimes it's a little pulling teeth. So I've given you a freebie this month that you will enjoy. It's a reflection piece. You're going to sit down, you're going to journal a little bit, but it's all meant to get you starting out with these creative juices, because I want you to really benefit from the stuff that I'm going to be teaching on this month. And so if you're one of those people, like many of us, like you are in good company. If you're one of those that's really struggling with even knowing what your dream life would be, well, then, honey, you are in the right place and I am going to get you started. In fact, I want to share real quick about 3 different coaching clients that I have been watching over the last year. So it just, haven't seen them actually in person in a group coaching format, other than they like to drop in on my free group coaching, but haven't had them in my group coaching now for, I want to say the last person graduated at least a year ago. So these are 3 like people that have been long time group coaching clients with the Learn to Love Your Story program. And I have watched some pretty magnificent things happening in these ladies' life kind of from afar, right? Because I get to keep following people on social media. They're still part of my small groups. They still, in our communities are talking about what their successes are. But I want to talk about these 3 ladies because I really want you to understand that what I teach and Learn to Love Your Story is not overnight success. It's lasting success. It's not, oh, I'm going to flip a switch and my life will look like amazing the next day. It's what are the little steps that you need to start to put into place that over time are going to create the lives that are your dream lives. Okay. So my first coaching client is somebody that I have known for a long time. She joined my group. She was kind of interested to see what it was that I was doing because I had been posting stuff on social media. And I would say, honestly, from the get-go, one of her goals in group coaching was that she needed to build some more compassionate self-awareness about why she was feeling stuck around her career in particular. There's a lot of life changes happening for this lady. Kids were aging out and moving out to go to college, things like that. But for her, what she was really focused on at the time when she was with the group was on the career side of things. And we always start with compassionate self-awareness because, hey, you can't know what needs to get fixed until you know what's there. So this lady in the very beginning really had a lot of the things that I see quite often, things like fear of success, right? Fear of, what if I actually do go out on a limb and go do this thing? And then I have a better life for myself over there. What do I do with this 27 years that I did something else? What do I say to myself, right? What do I say to my friends and family about why I stayed stagnant for that long, right? So this was what she was reckoning with. And it definitely was hard. Was less about her fear of stepping out because she knew her worth and she knew her value and she knew that she could go and get another career. What she was really struggling with was this idea that, like, what if people think like, why did she stay stuck then for that long? I mean, she could have been doing this the whole dang time. She was really worried about that. And honestly, she was really worried about how she would answer that to herself. And I know you know what I'm talking about, sister, because we have all been here. We have all been here where we're like, I have wasted how many blah, blah, blah years or blah, blah, blah time. I have wasted, the better part of my life in this job, in this relationship, in this predicament of whatever source it is. And we struggle to take the next step, even to dream what it is that we want, right? So that's my first coaching client. My second coaching client had recently been through a big breakup and really was wrestling with like how long they had been in that relationship, and they had so put in all of the effort into that relationship, and as they were coming out of it, they were recognizing how much they participated in their own suffering. So ladies, this coaching client really was, I mean, was in therapy and doing those things too. So I was just doing the coaching around like, here's the stepwise process for you to come to grips with this, have compassionate self-awareness about it, see how you were getting stuck and why you were participating in the things weren't, serving you any longer, what you needed for self-care to get you out of that, and how to build this growth mindset, which is really, that's the program in a nutshell right there. So this client was really struggling with this fear of failure. This fear that she had put in all this time in this relationship, this fear that they had worked really, really hard with the partner to make this work, and it just wouldn't work. And this idea that had they tried a little harder, had they done one more thing, had they, seen a different kind of therapist, and they had gone with their partner to therapy for years, and it did not work. So this client of mine, that's where they started where it was a relationship thing that really was the predicament for them. And then my third coaching client, one of my favorite things that this client said in the beginning of working with us, and this client also, I think this is the one that I saw the most recent, so probably has been within the last year. This client in the beginning was kind of like, so learn to love your story. I didn't really think was going to be a thing for me. The way that you framed that sounded like I had to hate something about my life, and I hate nothing about my life. So I was like, I don't really think I need anything, but I knew I was coming in this point where I was like in that transition, and I was kind of feeling like she didn't use the word stuck, but she kind of defined that. Like, she's just like, I'm doing the same thing all the time. I'm not getting the same amount of joy out of those things anymore. I was looking for something new. And once I, kind of listened to some of your stuff, Dr. Natalie, I thought, well, okay, this program probably could shake that loose for me. So very different reasons why these three coaching clients came into my program. One around career, one around relationship, one around meh. I feel okay with my life, but they're just, feels like there could be more. There could be something else. So this is where these three ladies start with me in my group coaching program. And I am going to tell you that it is this skill set that we're going to be talking about over the next month that really helped launch all three of these ladies. Very different directions for very different reasons. Same skill. And each and every one of them started in a position where things were holding them back. Oh, I forgot to say, I think that one of the things for that last individual, the one that didn't really think anything was wrong, right? Like, felt pretty good about life. The thing that she lacked was an amount of imagination. She just didn't have a tangible, like, here's where I'd like to go to. She knew her life solid backwards and forwards. She knew, when she was getting up and when she was getting out of bed and when she was going to the gym and when she was going to work, all those things, right? She felt great about her job. She felt great about her family life. But it was very monotonous and very rigid how she had framed her life. And so for her, what was happening was a lack of imagination. It wasn't, a lack of fear of succeeding. It wasn't a fear of failing. She just didn't even have an idea of where she wanted to be. So all three of these coaching clients at the stage where they come into my coaching program are really struggling with the very same thing. And that is a lack of dream, a lack of ability to tangibly see what could be on the other side of where they are. And that's where this journey will begin this month for all of us as I teach this skill set, because I do think that many of us find ourselves square in the middle of that. So I did a little mini experiment with my 8-year-old. I had her tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like it was those kinds of questions, right? Little girls are actually pretty good for talking at you. Well, at least this little girl. And so she came up with this idea. She's like, well, mom, I think that my dream job, I want to work with animals and I think animals should have rights. I think that like they should be fed and they should get what they need. And I think I'll want to be a veterinarian, but I think I want to be a veterinarian and I want to make sure that animals get treated well. Like they have rights, mom. So cute. I couldn't even stand it. And then I was like, well, what if you could just do anything in the whole wide world, like have anything you wanted? What would that be? And here's what she came up with next. A beautiful example of how the child's mind can be so imaginative. So she tells me about this idea that she has that we should be able to create stores that are specific to people that, and like it took me a while to figure out like where she was going because it wasn't said that concisely, but what she was thinking is like there should be stores for people like her that just want to go in and they want to get slime when they want to play and they want to get their favorite snacks when they want to snack and they want to have the food in the store that is the best kind of food for when mom makes their favorite dinner and they want to have all clothes in the store that go with what they like to have, that people should just have a store that's specialized to them and they can get whatever it is that they want from that store. And she just went on and on and on, you guys, about this. Now, I mean, here in my head, I'm thinking to myself, well, is that Amazon? I mean, let's be real. You can pretty much walk into that store online and get whatever you want. But I wasn't going to poo on her parade. Like that would be totally uncool because she was really excited about, like, she just kept going and going and going. And this is the beauty of that unadulterated imagination. And that's what we have to do. We have to unadulterate our own imaginations. And this is going to be hard to do because we are adulting and we're so hardcore adulting all the time that we have lost touch with this ability to just come up with things like that, just have these crazy off the wall ideas that are meaningful for us. So let's dig in. How do you start to dream? How do you start to let yourself have an imagination? Well, first of all, let's talk about 4 of the main reasons why dreaming starts to kind of get squelched. Okay. I've talked about 3 of them: fear of success, fear of failure, lack of imagination, and lack of confidence or belief that it could actually work. So these are the 4 sticky old habits that are going to get in our way of dreaming our big dreams and making sure that we can set it up in a way that we can intentionally work towards it. So how do we work with these 4 little muckety mucks? Well, there's 4 steps. All right. And the first step right out the gate is that we're going to have to believe. We have to believe that what we're doing is actually working. We have to believe that this dream of ours has really already happened, right? And I think you need to actually have that amount of belief and awe before you even can have the imagination. And I bet you're thinking to yourself, well, how in the heck does that work? Because don't you have to have like an idea of something before you believe in it? No, you need to believe in you, right? That's the confidence that you're really going to have to build. And the whole idea here is that you cannot undermine this with any of the worrying behaviors or the naysaying ideas that are going to flood you. Your adulting naysaying ideas are going to flood you as soon as you start these exercises that I've given you in my freebies, which, by the way, in the notes and at learntoloveyourstory.com. So what you have to start with is this premise that you can do anything. And you have to recognize that you've already done anything you set your mind to. And I know that you're questioning how I've just phrased that. Like, yeah, not really. I've set my mind to some things that I have fallen flat on. And here's what I'm pretty sure is happening in that scenario. You have set your mind on an idea of a goal. Okay, so we'll go back to my coaching client who feared her own failure. She couldn't think of being in a marriage or in a relationship other than the one that they were already in. Couldn't get there, couldn't see past that. And that was really the place that she was at as she came into coaching. And what we worked on was believing in herself, because what she was really worried about is that she couldn't handle what would be on the other side of that failure in that relationship. Because failure really isn't a thing, guys. It's just a step in the learning process. And we have no problem with failure when we watch our toddlers get up and fall and get up and fall and get up and fall until they get their balance and walk. We have no problem with that. We don't call our toddlers failures because they're falling on their butt. We laugh, we think it's cute, we get them back up, we try to help them, but we don't laugh and naysay and jeer what we're seeing. That's not a thing, right? Okay. The thing is that the neurology of learning new things is at work there. The very same way that the brain is working, our neurology is working when we do this new dream thing for ourselves. We must get up and fall and get up and fall and get up and fall a million times before we're going to actually arrive. It's part of that learning process. So failure isn't a thing. It's a construct that we've created to instill fear in us, thinking that fear would actually accelerate our succeeding, that it would like push us forward. But it's kind of backfiring at this point, right? Because for a lot of us who believe in perfectionism, which is also kind of what's happening there, but I didn't include it in the list today, but it is kind of one of the other competing factors here, is this idea of perfectionism. But because we want it to be all or none, then anything that's not in the all category falls into the none category. Meaning, if it doesn't look exactly like what I need it to look like the first time out the gate, then it sucks. And the habit, the sticky habit that we get into, is just to avoid doing anything that we might fail at. Perfectionists aren't perfect at everything. They're really, really good at avoiding things that they know they won't be perfect at. I'm going to say that again. Perfectionists are not good at everything. They are just really, really good at only doing the things that they do well and avoiding all things that they think that they will fail. That is problematic, right? They're not learning anything new. They stay fixed. And really the answer to this idea here is having that growth mindset, that there might be more ways to think about this, more ways to learn, more ways to get past it. So with my coaching client that came in, I don't coach on relationships. So I'm just coaching on how to get into growth mindset. And when she came in, it was real clear that she had that fixed mindset, because it would be kind of the same fears that would come up, the same, questioning of herself that would come up. And this is another reason why I love to do coaching in a group format, is her peers were really able to reflect that back to her. Like, we've heard you kind of say that a million times, and we're just curious, like, could you stay curious about why you keep shielding yourself with all the reasons this is a failure and you didn't do good enough and you should have tried one more thing and maybe there's another kind of therapist or something. And over time, what she was able to realize is that she was believing there was like, this is the marriage and it's going to work, and I just haven't figured out the way to work it. And what she really needed to do is take a step back and say, there's lots more options than that. I could have a growth mindset. I could have a more open mind around this. And I might see that this is not the marriage for my partner or for me, that this is not working for either of us, and that it isn't a failure. It's that this relationship has kind of met its end at this point, and we're kind of pushing it past that point, actually, and in so suffering through that. So I have watched her now for the better part of a little over a year really just start to like bud online. It's so exciting, like getting into new stuff. They've joined a bunch of new, clubs and doing different things. They moved, they found a space that's all their own, which is also really fun to watch how they're growing in that way, and all in their midlife. Because one of the things that this this individual was fearful of is, could I even start over? Like, I know how to do the marriage thing because I've been doing it for so long, but I'm not so sure I would know how to do all the single ladies in my midlife. Like, they didn't know if that would actually be a thing for them. So it's really lovely to watch how, what we taught were the ground rules for how do you start to have confidence in yourself? How do you start to believe I'll make it? I don't know how. I don't know if I get to know how, but I know it's going to happen. That's for sure. So it's really been brilliant to watch her grow across this time, because coming into that growth mindset, learning the skill sets, that's what's happened. And what she was able to do within the time that we were working together is she started to believe that every step she was taking was the right step for that moment. Right? One of the principles I teach is this idea of the next right thing. All you're responsible for is, in this moment, what's the next right thing for me to do? Nothing more, nothing less. I just know that if I'm doing this, it's in alignment with what this dream is. And I don't have to know what step 2 through 20 are. I only have to know what the step 1 right in front of me is. That's it. It's all I'm responsible for. Once I'm there, then I can start looking for what step 2 will be, and it'll make itself known in my life if I'm believing that I've got this. I'm already I'm on the trajectory of my new life. I was talking to another client today, and one of the ways that we framed this for her was, I want you to think about, like, what is the step to do today that future you is going to include in this story of your growth here? Right? It seems something small today. It seems like, oh, this is nothing. I went and joined a club. What? But it's a huge thing when you look at the whole story of your healing journey. It's the beginning steps of what is that healing journey. And all you're today responsible for is that beginning step. And all you need to know is that beginning step. You don't need to know anything in between. But what would future you tell you is that important step to be doing today? That was one of the ways that we framed it for her. So that's how you're going to deal with starting to believe in yourself. And that's step 1. Step 2 is to face the fears. And that's the fears of success, and that's the fears of failure. So you really do have to reckon with this idea that you're afraid, right? And so we did talk a little bit with my, the second coaching client. I have no idea where I am anymore, but the one that was needing some coaching and having relationship issues. We talked about how hers was a fear of failure, but my first coaching client, hers was really a fear of success. She was doing well in her career, but just feeling stagnant, had some awareness that she was feeling stagnant in it. And what was really holding her back was this idea that, like, what if I do succeed? Then what do I say to myself that I stayed in this stagnant job for as long as I did? What will I tell other people when they ask me that question? Like, she was really struggling with this idea that she had let herself down by not moving sooner, that it had taken this long for her to get there. I mean, I do work with women in midlife, and we're in our 40s and 50s, and some of us in our 60s. It's hard. It's hard to get to this point and finally have the compassionate self-awareness to see we have held ourselves in place with some of these icky, sticky old habits of ours that we were taught and we just do really, really well. Not cool to see. Not a lot of us want to look at that, right? So for her, it was the fear of success. And the way that we helped her get through that fear was a different way of looking at this. It wasn't necessarily that she didn't have a growth mindset. She had some of those stepping stones already, or she wouldn't have had the awareness to join my program to figure this out, right? However, she was really getting stuck in the idea that there were these things like a waste of time. And there were these things like, what do I have to tell other people? Like, I owe it to other people to give them an explanation. And what do I say to myself when I have wasted all this time? Like, how do I forgive myself for all those years? It really helped her to reframe for herself these rules that held all that up. Okay. So like the rule that says you owe it to other people to give them an explanation, not my favorite rule. And I guarantee you, I have done hundreds, if not thousands of hours of therapy with people in my lifetime around that. Well, I owe it to them. I need to explain it. I'm not going to be able to leave this marriage unless I can explain it to my kids. I'm not going to be able to jump out of this job unless I can tell my employees why it is that this doesn't work for me anymore. That we always feel like we owe something to somebody else is a very common cultural program, social program that we all follow pretty hook, line, and sinker. So we helped her to reframe like that might have been a rule that served you for a very long time. It helped you to have integrity. It helped you to, get to where you are within the job that you're in. And all of that those were important steps, right? But it doesn't serve you now and it's holding you back. So how do we help you change that rule to be something that better serves you? And her growth mindset like immediately leaped to this idea of, oh, I needed to think that so that I could build the skills I had within the job I had. And now I know I'm going to succeed going forward. And I don't owe anybody an explanation of why I want to evolve that way. If they want to know and they're invested in a relationship with me, they'll know because I'll have been talking to them about this the whole time. And if they're not, and they're just being voyeuristic and want to like, you prove to me why it is that you get to go yuppity yup and take on your dream in your career. This doesn't seem fair. She wouldn't have to answer to that. Like those are not people that serve her at all, that have a good relationship with her at all. And all of a sudden it started to become really crystal clear to her that she didn't fear success. She feared breaking the rules. And that was what we really helped her to shift on. And it helped her to really open herself up in this dreaming, right? Okay, now the third step. And the third step really helped my last coaching client who, came to me with, I kind of don't know that I need to love my story. I think I already do. And she didn't really think, she's like, that title doesn't really work for me. But then she figured out kind of some of the stuff that I do in my programming and she was interested and intrigued and joined. But for her, there was a stagnation happening in her life that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Because when she looked at her life, all she could see is like, it's all going well. Like I'm doing all the things. It was very rigid, right? But she was doing all the things and it was a good life. By what standards, right? Like if you're feeling kind of like, could there be more here? Then it's time for evolution, right? So the growth mindset that we were really helping her reckon with is just because you're moving beyond where you are presently doesn't mean that where you are presently and where you've been have less value in any way. It just means you're growing. The version of you today is not who set this life up 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The version of you today has a different feeling on the inside and is telling you something about, I think that we're ready for something else, right? I really do. All right. So once we were able to help her have that compassionate self-awareness, her real stumbling block was the lack of imagination. Like I said before, her real big deal was just that she's like, I don't even know. I don't even know where to start. And if I had asked her questions like I was asking my daughter, if she had kind of come up with the idea of, let's make a store where you can get anything that you want, she herself would have started to self-critically take that down and say, well, there's already Amazon, so nobody needs that. So I don't need to create that because there's already an Amazon. And, by the way, it just doesn't make sense to have a store and have it all over the place. I mean, I probably should do it on the internet. And of course, Amazon is on the internet. I don't want to compete with that. And, I know I was going to be a little bit more boutique about it, but yeah, everybody's doing boutique. Like right away, what would happen is she would make it smaller and smaller and smaller because she was really, really good at staying in the boxes that had been set up for her in her life. She was just, and liked her life, liked the roles, good for her, great. But it only limits us to that box when we live in it. And that was really what she was bumping up against is she was ready for some growth. She was ready for something new. And all of the sticky, icky old habits that she had would small that down into a little box that she had already been taught about. And this is where people run into that problem that I talk about all the time, which is old maps take you to old places, right? You go back to your old maps, you know where you're going. And if you want something new in your life, you can't get there with that old map. It's not going to take you there, right? You're building new neighborhoods. They are off the grid, girlfriend. They are not they are not on the GPS any longer. So for her, what we really had to hone in on was like, how do we start to let ourselves have permission to just wish? What would be my most extravagant life? What would be if I was just like, nothing held me back? Not a fear, not a lack of imagination, not anything. If nothing was holding me back, my responsibilities weren't holding me back, none of the naysaying actually held water. If none of that mattered, what would I do? And eventually, not unlike the tools that I'm giving you in the free tools that you have the link to in the notes or on learntoloveyourstory.com, what we were able to help her do is through that kind of introspection and reflection to really allow herself permission to have the imagination. And here's one of the ways that we do this, and you'll see this in your free handout. You need to hook it to something that's meaningful for you. Okay. So one of the things that I'll hear people say is you got to know your why. What's your why? Which seems really trendy, a trendy way to talk about it. Needs to have meaning. It needs to have value, and it needs to tie to some sort of core value for you. Right. So if what's really important, if you're going to build, a store that has everything for anybody, and it's boutiquey and all of those things. I think my daughter's idea was just kind of cute. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to go with it today. It's my metaphor for the day. But if that's what your dream is, it still has to tie to something that makes meaning to you, right? It would have to tie back to, because I want everybody to feel like all they have to do is look in one place conveniently and it's all there for them, and somebody else did the work. This is one thing that they don't have to do work for themselves on. Because I know what it feels like to be doing all the time and not having a space or a place where you feel like somebody's done it all for me. It's gonna have to tie back to something like that. If it does not, that's where our imagination starts to fall flat, right? That's where all of that naysaying and the fears and the things like that can really eat away and erode it, because we're really not tied into it, right? So the best example I can give you of this is everything that I've done for Learn to Love Your Story. I just knew at the beginning of COVID that we're all going to be going through it, like really going through it, because emotionally, there was no way, after all of our lives changed so quickly, so rapidly, and so significantly, that we weren't going to have a major emotional impact. Lots of grieving, of ambiguous loss to do, blah, 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 psychological psychobabble. But what I knew is that we needed to do more, because not everybody has access to mental health. Not everybody's going to access mental health. And there's not enough of us to go around for you folks. I'm just saying, like, there's only so many mental health professionals. So even if we were all accessing them or had access to them or both, there aren't going to be enough of us. So I wanted to get this kind of information out there in some capacity. And I just threw some videos out on the interwebs, because I had been doing videos with another friend of mine. And then somebody said, what about courses? And I started to put those together. And then when I put those together, I was like, how do you get those out into the world? And so then I did the next thing, right? I was using that next right thing kind of principle, and I learned how to market stuff. And then in learning that, I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know that I should have probably known to be doing. And it was just one little thing after another, right? 2023, I'm talking to you right now on a podcast. I wrote that down in 2020 as one of my ideas. I had lots of ideas, but I couldn't do step 1 through 50 all at one time. So I just kept doing the next right thing in front of me. And look at how far this has come. You're listening to this, and hopefully it's really helping you. And that, my friends, was tied to a value of mine, that we could be doing better for ourselves, that mental health professionals have all of this wealth of information, and there's a way to get it out there and disseminate it in different ways for different people. And I just needed to be doing that in some sort of fashion, because it was important to me. And here I've built an entire coaching business that was my side hustle that's now more of my half hustle. I'm not right, I'm not quite sure where it's at yet. I hope it's my whole hustle at some point. But yeah, this is amazing that I have been able, without any ideas, just to keep dreaming towards something. But if you can't hook it to something meaningful, you won't be able to have that dream. You won't be able to set that intention and keep that focus. You won't be able to hold on to it when you're feeling burned out and like things aren't working as you would like them. And believe me, with any dream, we fall that way. That's part of the learning process. So those are the first 3 steps. And the 4th step is the easiest one of them all, right? So step 1, got to believe in yourself. You've got to be able to do that. Step 2, you gotta face all those fears, ladies. We have to be able to put those to bed. We need to have courage. Just so you know, courage doesn't mean the fear goes away. It means we do the things anyway. So you're going to have to learn how to tolerate those fears and move past them. And a growth mindset is a great way to do that. Number 3 is you've got to hook it to something that's meaningful. And that's really going to open up your imagination and let yourself dream. That's super, super important to be doing, because if you don't have a dream, you're not going to follow it, right? You can't set that intention to keep going forward. But number 4 is one of my faves. Number 4 is just enjoy yourself. For crying out loud. Life is hard. Life is a drag sometimes. Can feel like you're just getting up and doing the things and plotting through from day to day. So if you're going to do a dream, not only should it be meaningful, not only do you need to believe in yourself, not only do you need to push past your fears, but you need to have joy, my friend. You need to enjoy the process. You need to enjoy yourself and do it for you. And that's actually a really important piece. If you don't have that, it just becomes another to-do item. It just becomes another task in the endless lists of tasks that women have and have created for themselves. And so I promise you, it won't go very far. You can't make a dream come true when it feels like a drag. It's not a dream then. So enjoy yourself. That's an important piece. Now, I hope that this has been helpful and you've heard something today that's got you wanting creative juices. Go to the notes for today's show. Download that freebie. Go to learntoloveyourstory.com. Download that freebie because I've replaced last week's cheat sheet with this dream sheet. So you can do this. I promise you. And it's just going to start with some writing stuff down and reflecting and starting to figure out where in those areas. Is it my fears that are holding me back? Is it my lack of confidence? Is it my lack of imagination? Where am I feeling stopped? And it could be more than one of those, maybe not. But where am I getting stopped in actually letting myself just dream? Because I want you to be able to dream and I want you to really be able to set your sights on something huge for yourself because you deserve it. And you will then learn to love your story.